So in the last video, I basically touched on why inverse function of the original function is not necessarily a function. So here's why. Because the points of the original function passes through the horizontal line test at least twice. So the red curve here showing you the original function is a basic quadratic function y equals x squared. If I apply the horizontal line test for this red curve, I know that the horizontal line will pass through the red curve at least twice. So if this is the case, I know that the inverse for this red curve is not a function. So let's do a couple of exercises before I proceed to the next topic. So the red curve below are the original function, f of x. So I want to ask you the following. So is it true that the inverse function from this original function falls into function category? So we know that the inverse of this original function is not necessarily a function. So my question is, if this is true, so how could we check that? So this is original function. So remember I talked about the horizontal line test. So if I put the horizontal line here, I know that the red curve will going to hit the horizontal line at least twice, right? So I know that the inverse of this red curve is not a function, but the red curve itself is a function. So in the second situation, you see that, so this function is exponential growth function. So at this example, if I apply the horizontal line, so you know that the red curve will only hit the horizontal line at least once. So because it hit the horizontal line at least once, so I know that the inverse of this original function is going to be a function. So here comes the most important concept you're going to learn in this chapter. So how can we deal with the issues that the inverse is not a function? So you know that in the previous attempt, I showed you that the inverse is not necessarily a function. So in this example, the red curve, you know that it's a quadratic function. If I apply the horizontal line test, so you know that the horizontal line will hit the red curve at least twice. So because of that, the inverse of this quadratic function is not a function. So the question for you guys is that, how can we make the inverse become a function? So basically, I need to do is to restrict the domain from the original function. So you know that this domain here is all the real numbers. I need to restrict it in a small portion. So the first thing I could do is to make the left side of the quadratic function disappear. So at this time, the horizontal line will only pass through the red curve once. So if the horizontal line passes through the red curve once, I know that the inverse should be the function, right? So the inverse for this curve should be a function, and I'm going to take out the bottom part of this one. So I'm pretty sure that the blue curve now, the inverse become a function. So in the second scenario, I can actually take out the right side of the quadratic function, right, and make the left side appears. So the horizontal line will only pass through the red curve once. So if I take out the upper portion of the blue curve, I know that the blue curve here would be my function. So the inverse would be a function as well. So to conclude, I have two ways to make the inverse falls into function category. So the first way is to make the left side disappear. I'm setting the x greater or equal to 0. The second way, I can make the right side of quadratic function disappear, and I'm setting x less than or equal to 0. So either this happens, the function, the inverse, will fall into function category.